Hi everyone, my name's Andrea, and in today's video, I'm going to show you guys how to put yourself first without feeling guilty, Latino edition. So, it's no surprise that in most Latino and just immigrant households, there's this kind of unspoken expectation that family always comes first and your needs are just kind of secondary. Growing up as a child of immigrants, I just always felt guilty. I felt like I was in debt to my parents because of all the sacrifices they made for me to be here and grow up in the United States. And even though I know I should be grateful for it, it also doesn't mean I owe them my life, you know? And as I got older and more educated, and throughout my journey in becoming a therapist, I've learned the importance of boundaries and prioritizing yourself, and just like how crucial these things are for you to live your best life. And I'm happy to say that I've reached a healthy balance between like being there for my family and meeting my own needs. And that's why I wanted to make this video, to share with you guys how I got there, and hopefully it will help you out. Before you can do anything, you need to believe you're worthy of putting yourself first. Ask yourself, do you really think you're worthy of doing it? Do you think you're capable? I don't mean to sound so repetitive, but a lot of you don't feel like you're worthy of doing it. You have good intentions, you want to put yourself first, but deep down inside, you don't feel like you deserve it. So you need to resolve that first before implementing any sort of advice. And the way you feel worthy is by building your self-esteem, your confidence. The way I was able to work on my self-esteem was by doing the things that I say I'm going to do. Like, I would set myself goals like, oh, I'm going to go to the gym 4 times a week. And if I did it, I would feel more confident. Or I would set a goal to eat healthier. And once I started eating healthier, I started like trusting myself more. And I set another challenge, like I want to move to this new city. And then I did it. And then I'm like, whoa, like I can do everything I set my mind to. It really, actions really helped build my confidence. And now I'm at a point where I believe I'm capable of doing anything, honestly. And I feel worthy as a person because I'm proud of who I am and my accomplishments. When you feel good about yourself, you love yourself, it's so easy to put yourself first. Once you feel worthy of putting yourself first, you need to know why you're doing it in the first place. Why is it so important to you? What is the motivation? And for me, it was that I was never going to live my best life if I didn't learn how to put myself first, okay? My life was just going to be miserable, and that scared me, and it should scare you too. So that was my motivator. I think motivators are very important because they keep you inspired when things get difficult, because putting yourself first, putting boundaries, it can be rough. And if you don't have an important reason to do it, you'll probably just kind of give up. And I don't want you guys to give up on it. So once you believe you're worthy of putting yourself first and you have like the reasoning behind it and you're motivated, it's time to take action. And the first thing you're gonna do is start setting small boundaries with your parents, okay? Or any boundary that you're comfortable with. And this can look a lot of different ways. See, for me, it started with saying no to family gatherings that I didn't want to go to. So when I lived with my parents, we would always have a bunch of, parties and whatnot to go to. And I was always obligated to go. It was kind of like an unspoken rule that I was going to be attending. And I remember having to one day just be like, you know what, Mom? Like, I don't want to go to this. And I remember my mom just being so shocked by me saying that. And, she had a very negative reaction to it. She's like, but everyone's going to be there with like their children, and you're just like going to let me go by myself. Like, she would make me feel really guilty about it. I remember thinking, dang, is it really that big of a deal? And even if I told her like I had work to do or something, she would still feel like I should be choosing the party over that. But I didn't give in to her negative reactions. And that's something really important with like when you're implementing boundaries. Like, you can't be bothered by their reactions to it, okay? I remember my mom being bothered, but I could care less. And I just went back to my room. I just couldn't believe I didn't do it sooner. Like, yeah, it sucked to see my mom's reaction, But at the end, I was so much happier. I got my time back. And sometimes, like, we're so scared of like the boundary and what it's gonna do, but it doesn't really do anything that scary other than getting like a negative reaction from your parent. I don't know. I don't think that should hold you back. But setting a boundary for you might be like not calling your parents as frequently, maybe not visiting them as frequently. And I think it's okay to make up excuses if it's for your well-being. Like maybe tell your parents like you have work or some other thing to attend to that's important. I remember also as I got more comfortable, like telling my mom to not tell me her relationship issues with my dad. Like growing up, she would always come to me for like relationship advice. Like I was like 10 years old and my mom would be asking me for like advice, okay? I was definitely like parentified and you know, it got to a point where like I hated hearing her talk about my dad and complain about him because that's my dad, you know? And I remember telling her one day, Mom, you can't tell me like your relationship issues anymore. And again, I got this really negative reaction, you know, and I told her like it's really affecting my mental health and whatnot. And she made me feel guilty. She was like, "Oh, but you're my daughter, you know, I can't tell this to your brother." And like, I don't have any other friends. And like, she would get like teary eyed. And I just wouldn't give in. I remember like looking at her and just being like, "I'm sorry, it's just really affecting me." And sure enough, that's how she ended up respecting me and my wants. And something really important too is that you need to give your parents space to respect your boundaries. They're not like, chances are they're not going to listen to you the first time. Okay? Hear me out. Like with the situation with like my mom and her complaining about my dad to me, I told her once, "Hey, I don't want you telling me your issues." And sure enough, I think maybe a couple of days later, she started telling me the issues again. And I had to tell her, "Mom, I already asked you to not talk these things with me." And again, she reacted negatively. But once I told her a second time, she just didn't complain about him to me anymore, you know? Um, Sometimes you do have to repeat yourself, and I don't think that's a bad thing necessarily. You know, for me, it's easy to understand that, like, my parents, like, in their eyes, they don't see any harm in what they're doing. So when I'm setting a boundary, it's so unfamiliar to them. If you give into like their reactions and you end up like for instance with like the family gatherings you end up going because you feel bad, they know where to get you. They know that like by giving you a negative reaction you won't implement your boundary. So you got to kind of stay strong even when they're making you feel really guilty, because that's when they'll learn to respect you, okay? Just remember that you don't need the validation to know that your needs are important. And that's another big thing with like setting boundaries with parents is like you might not have their support. They might never tell you, "Oh my goodness, we're so sorry for making you feel that way," and like you're so right. No, you might never get that. But when you learn to rely on your own validation, you won't really care what they think, you know? And that's why I say like it's so important to have a decent level of self-esteem, because you'll need your own validation in order to put yourself first. I also want to remind you guys that boundaries will not ruin closeness. A lot of people are scared to implement boundaries with their parents because they feel like it'll ruin the relationship, and it will not, okay? I am just as close to my parents now as I was years ago. They love me just as much. We just have a healthier relationship now. Our closeness isn't built on guilt or obligation anymore. And like, if that's what you're afraid of losing, I mean, like, don't be afraid of like having some distance between your parents for a little bit, while they get used to like respecting your boundaries and whatnot. I think it's worth the discomfort for a while for like a better outcome in the long run. Your relationship with your parents will change, but now it's going to be much more genuine. and there's not going to be resentment. Yay! If you're watching this and you're like, man, I would never be able to implement any of those boundaries with my family, then my recommendation to you is to move out. Yeah, you got to take some more drastic measures. That way you'll naturally enforce boundaries. You won't have to like be attentive to your parents all the time because you're not under the same roof. Okay, if you're like in high school watching this and you struggle, like your relationship with your parents is struggling and whatever, maybe it's a good idea to go to college far away, even if that means having to get a job, even if it means having to get in debt a little bit. I think your mental well-being is worth the price. Or maybe you're in your 20s living with your parents and you're there because it's rent-free, but they're like not respectful of you. They consume all your time. You don't know how to put yourself first when you live with them. Maybe it's time to get a job and pay rent, and you'll probably be happier. And my last piece of advice is to go to therapy. I think a lot of people can have the opportunity to go, but just don't. There's just things you will learn in therapy that you will not learn anywhere else. For instance, I remember in one of my therapy sessions a couple years back, I was complaining to my therapist about this trip to Mexico that I went on with my family and how I didn't want to be there and I wish I could have stayed home. And she was like, how old are you? I think I was like 20 at the time. She's like, you could say no and just not have gone. And I was shocked by her comment. I was like, what? Isn't that like bad? I wouldn't be listening to my mom. It's like a family tradition to go every year. And she's like, no, it's okay. You're an adult now. You have your own life, your own needs. And that was really eye-opening, and I wouldn't have known that I could say no if it wasn't for my therapist telling me that. There's just certain things you'll learn in therapy that you will not learn anywhere else. I have to tell you guys, if you can go to therapy, go, because it's tailored for you. And I know that everyone's situation with their immigrant parents is a little different. And it's a great way to just have some additional support. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please let me know your thoughts below. Any questions you guys think I could help you guys out with. Thank you guys. Bye.